Now, some of you might be wondering why I am doing a video on the 10 greatest composers of all time. Well, I would have thought the answer was obvious. Firstly, as anyone who has watched any of my videos will know, I'm highly opinionated. Secondly, I'm trying my best to preserve the finest aspects of Western culture. In short, I'm trying to save civilization. Do I really have to spell it out for you? Sheesh. And then you wonder why I get grumpy. Anyway, these are the criteria I've used for picking the top 10. But in addition to these 5 factors, there is one more. What the French would refer to as je ne sais quoi. That's a certain something difficult to define, that in this case identifies a genius who reaches great heights. I guess I'd better warn you now that I can be just a little bit pretentious at times. I'm sorry, but it's just a part of my nature. I cannot help it. Now, the first 9 people on the list of the 10 greatest composers ever to walk the earth virtually picked themselves. Not only did I have little trouble in identifying the first 9, I also had very little trouble ranking them according to the criteria that I mentioned, plus of course that certain je ne sais quoi. But the 10th place was much more difficult to decide on, or at least at first. There were a number of contenders for the spot, including Johannes-Brahms, Sergei Prokofiev, Aaron-Copland, Igor Stravinsky, and others who came close, but no cigar. Bet you can't wait, huh? Isn't this exciting? Anyway, the 10th place on the list of the 10 greatest composers ever was ultimately filled by someone whose credentials unquestionably established him as the best of the rest, though some may question just how unquestionable this was, and may wonder why he was picked over some of the others. All will be made clear at the end of the series after we identify the greatest composer of all time. And so the countdown begins. In 10th place, it is none other than the Austrian composer Richard-Strauss. To Strauss compadres, he is always Richard rather than Richard, and never, never Dick. No. Oh, and by the way, don't ever make the mistake of saying, as someone did to me, "Oh yeah, that's Strauss, he's that waltz guy, isn't he? Gee, I just love the Blue Danube." For those of you who don't know, that was another Strauss entirely, Johannes-Strauss Jr. Never, ever confuse the two, or you could be run out of town before sundown, or at the very least, people will snigger as you pass by and whisper behind their hands, "There goes that guy who doesn't know his Strauss from his elbow." Now, Richard-Strauss is perhaps best known to the general public for Thus Spake Zarathustra, the music used at the beginning of the movie 2001: A-Space-Odyssey. Now, some people, including Alex-Ross, the New York music critic who wrote the book with the provocative title "The Rest is Noise," believe that 20th century music begins with the 1906 Austrian premiere of Strauss's opera Salome, based on Oscar Wilde's play. Salome shocked audiences and caused such an uproar that it closed after just one performance, but elsewhere it was received with great enthusiasm. As noted in Wikipedia, Strauss was a relatively conservative composer until he met up with a guy called Alexander Ritter, who was married to the niece of Richard-Wagner. Ritter persuaded Strauss to begin writing tone poems and also introduced Strauss to the essays of Wagner and the writings of Schopenhauer. This resulted in the creation of the tone poem Don Juan, which caused quite a stir when it was first performed. When Don Juan premiered in November 1889, it was cheered wildly by half the audience and booed just as loudly by the other half of the audience. But Strauss knew that he had at last found his own voice, and a very original voice it was too. This is what he wrote. "I now comfort myself with the knowledge that I am on the road I want to take, fully conscious that there never has been an artist not considered crazy by thousands of his fellow men." Strauss was a pioneer in introducing dissonance into his operas, but the music that he created was exciting to the ear, not grating and pretentious like some of the works of later composers who used dissonance simply for its own sake and who ended up creating nothing but irritating noise. One of his most popular operas is Der Rosenkavalier, which is widely touted as one of the most sensuous operatic scores ever written, and which has been performed regularly over the decades in many parts of the world. One of my all-time favorite pieces of music is Strauss's Till Eulenspiegel's Merry Pranks. Strauss was also one of the greatest orchestrators who ever lived, as is most evident in his Alpine Symphony. And indeed, there is an Alpine quality running through much of his work, very refreshing and invigorating. The countdown continues in my next video, when I will be identifying the person in the 9th spot on the list of the world's greatest composers. In the meantime, here is some more background information on Strauss from Wikipedia, along with some personal music.